Welcome back to the Win with Dice podcast, a podcast featuring members of the Win with Dice team. I'm Calvin, and I'm joined here by Ramon.
Hey guys, thanks for listening. If this is the first time you guys are listening to the Win with Dice podcast, thank you. And this is a podcast where we talk about tabletop RPGs. Calvin and I like to take a casual approach to the hobby. So we like to talk about the games that we run, the games that we play in, and all the cool, wonderful people we get to experience this whole thing with. And if you're new to tabletop RPGs, what are you doing? You should go and join a game. And if you've been playing for a while, hey, why don't you GM for your table?
Indeed. GMing is a whole lot of fun, and it's one of our favorite things to do, and, we just want everybody to give it a try, because you'll probably enjoy it more than you think you will. In addition, just some channel stuff. If you're into tabletop RPGs, again, please check out our other episodes of the podcast. If you're into Pathfinder or Lancer or all sorts of games, definitely check out everything we've got here. We've got discussions on game recaps, as well as tabletop RPG topics. And if you're into gaming streams, we've got some of those too, but we'll get into more details on that later. This week, we have an update on the Homebrew tabletop RPG Ramon has been working on. We're trying to get into some regular playtesting now, so I'm interested in seeing what has come out of that so far. Before we get into all of that, we have to get to the most important part of the show, Ramon. The Win with Dice weekly GM tip of the week.
Yes, the Win with Dice weekly GM tip of the week, brought to you by Calvin. If I don't interrupt him,
yeah, save the Grand Saga stuff where we're talking about it, so we can keep it all together. That's what the timestamps are for.
Oh my god, dude! What episode is this? Like 150? Like what?
Like, getting there.
I'm just interrupting you. Jeez. All right, let's go into the tip of the week, Calvin. What did you learn?
Yeah, I think the podcast is old enough to drive now. All right, so recently I ran a game. We'll get into the recap of it maybe next week, just because I need to redo my notes because I lost track of my notes when combat started because I was a bit too into it. I don't know if I have a reputation with our listeners of being the guy who kills too many player characters, but if I did not already. But anyway, what's more important though is I wasn't super happy with how things turned out with regards to how the session had ended. And I just had a discussion with the players earlier today. We haven't really come to a conclusion yet. It's something we're still talking about. Just as a way of how we're going to move forward from this point. Because there's certainly things I wanted to do with certain characters. There were certain new characters I wanted to spend more time with. And I just don't really like how things got cut short. And I have ideas of how to maybe bring certain characters back. And of course they have their own ideas as well. And some of them wanted to play new characters. Because they had things they wanted to try or things they haven't gotten to do yet. So we're trying to figure out a solution that works for everyone. If you bring the party back, if you change up things, if people play as their characters for a bit longer and then switch them out with whatever reason, stuff like that. We're trying to work on a solution, but I think the main point I want to make is that if you're not feeling, and this is probably something we've mentioned a few times before, but if you're not feeling satisfied with where things are going in your game, you can communicate with your players about that, because the game itself is supposed to be fun for everybody involved. That includes the person running it. And if you're having an issue, you can probably figure out a way to solve it, easier by communicating with people than trying to solve it on your own and assuming what your players want.
Yeah, I mean, it's always better to, have everyone having fun at the table, including yourself. GMs are players too, so if you're not having fun, you should definitely talk to your table about it. And if you don't like the direction where your story is going, then it's all made up anyway. You guys can change anything you want.
Yeah, it is, because it's gonna have to be something that's obviously within reason, right? But that's gonna depend on what everybody's comfortable with and what sort of changes people would want, and just figure out what people want to do, figure out what you want to do, and then find some way to make a compromise between those things. Because this like Ramon is saying, this all takes place in your imagination, so you can definitely find a way to make things work.
Yeah, and I think obviously, if a situation is that a player has put a lot of effort into something, or it's too pivotal for the story to go back on, then avoid those. But if you're not having fun as the GM, that's definitely a problem, because honestly, you do the most amount of work, so you should probably having at least some fun, right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah, it's got to be something that you're happy with too, and if you're not, then communicate that.
Yeah.
There is our tip of the week. All right, so Ramon, let's get into your testing of Grand Saga. You've run a few more sessions of it recently, and you've been testing out some of the narrative rules that we may have lightly touched on, but I don't think we've gone into very deep details with, because those are still under significant testing. So let's get into, I guess, changes that you may have made, and I kind of want to get into like a description of your intents with the game, if that makes sense. Just like a basic description of the game for people who might not know what it is, and then things you're doing with it now.
So it's so Grand Saga is like a tactical tabletop RPG. You play it on the grid. It does have tactical combats, but the game is really trying to emulate the feel of you kind of playing that kind of big bombastic like JRPG character or anime character with big flashy moves and cool combo techniques and stuff like that. The idea of the game is to build a character that's kind of your own. I find that like sometimes classes and stuff kind of shoehorn you into one thing, but my idea would be like, I want my players to be powerful, and I want them to have their own unique class. So like that's like kind of like where the intention of the game is. As far as like the narrative side, I want that to be also pretty rules light in comparison to the combat stuff. So I'll actually get into that once we get into the all of the cool stuff I'm doing with the narrative.
Right. Because we're sort of dealing with like a previous campaign that you had run, and we're getting a bit back into that, but using the Grand Saga rules to make it function. Yeah. I'm trying to get I wanted a basis, at least a little bit of a story for the playtests, just because it's kind of tough having characters just be like, this is the random battle number 59 or whatever, right? Which is a little bit more I would say like economical, but it's not as fun for players to show up every week to just be like, okay, nothing I do matters, other than I guess you're playtesting. But I think it's good too to have a little bit of a background, especially for narrative play. I found myself like struggling, how do I test a narrative scenario without a story to play with, right? True.
Yeah. So, but to be fair, since I playtest, I should probably playtest more. I've made like sweeping changes to the narrative rules, I think, or they haven't been implemented yet, but they've actually changed since the players have playtested. So, Calvin, it's changed. This is your official notice.
Okay, well, I got to reread it then. So, I guess let's get into it. Do you want to start with the narrative stuff, or do you have other mechanics you want to get into first?
Let's do the narrative.
I feel like that's the biggest changes that you want to get into. So let's just get into that.
Yeah, well, basically the narrative rules didn't really exist. They kind of were there for the at the beginning, but it was going through a lot of iterations. I couldn't figure out how I wanted to do it, but I think I don't know. I had a crackpot scheme in the middle of the night, like last week. So
that is, it's either when you're in bed or when you're in the shower that the best idea is just.
I've come up with whole campaigns in like the like a 20-minute shower or whatever. But like the playtesters, the rules that they use was I loosely based it off of Blades in the Dark. Where you just kind of roll a bunch of d6s and you take the highest, and based on like the highest die that showed, that's what they were. That's like the results. So like like a 6 would be you super cool, you did it. 4 to 5 is you did it, but here's like a little twist or a complication, and 1 to 3 is like, damn son, you fell on your face. Sucks to be you. And if you roll double 6s, you roll double box cards, you get a critical success, which was okay, I think. And like the amount of dice you rolled for the check or whatever, it would be the amount of skill you had. So and if you had like skills in applying force, you had like 2 points in applying force, then you'd roll 2 d6s and taking the highest result of that, which was fine, I think. I wasn't that sold on it. I think that maybe my players aren't used to that kind of mechanic before, because normally like the people that we play with play like Pathfinder, where you'd roll that d20 and you get a number, and that number goes against a DC, and that's, you know, either you pass or you fail or whatever, right? They're more used to that, so it was a little bit of like a, I should say like a it's hard for them to get their heads around that. But I don't know, Calvin, what was your thinking of it? Because I have my own reservations of it, and I obviously, since I changed it, I wasn't too happy about it.
Yeah, I think what I was mostly doing with regards to those narrative moments is I was just trying to think of like, how do I apply my specific skill here? Because these skills are very, I guess, narrative based. They're not so specific as to say you need to roll X skill to do Y thing, but it's a bit more broad than that. So I'm trying to figure out like, how can I apply this thing that I know I'm good at in order to succeed further in this thing. So I guess what I mean by that is I'm just like, sort of as I would with other games, I'm just looking at like, what is this character good at and how is that going to help here? Yeah,
but I think like that's the crux of narrative skills, to be honest with you. You know, it limits I think it limits player expression in a way, because you have to, like, you're constantly as a player being like, how am I going to be able to shoehorn my highest bonus into every skill?
Right.
every interaction, right? Every interaction's like, oh, if I'm really good at, you know, smashing rocks, you best know I'm going to walk into the king and smash this rock so I can win his favor or something, right? Like, it's like in every situation, you're like, I don't know how I'm going to apply this very specific, unique talent in a situation that doesn't call for it.
Yeah, like one of the things I had was like applying force. So I'm trying to figure out like, how can I apply force in a situation where I might not have a thing to directly fight or whatever.
Yeah, which I mean, like, is fine, but I think that kind of narrows the scope, even though it's actually intended to be more free than that, right? Because, you know, you're trying to get a higher result so you can succeed, but either way, it's kind of like a 50-50 to succeed, right? On that kind of roll, because it's like, you know, high, like 4 to 6, you did it, right? Whatever you're trying to do. I mean, you get some bad stuff, but like that's kind of how everything's outcome, which I kind of like the idea of like, you know, obviously like I'm a big fan of mixed results, because that's kind of how life is. It's mostly you never do anything perfectly. It's always kind of mixed results anyway. But I found that, like, you know, even with them, when you give the players the freedom, they still always revert back to, give me that biggest number. I'm going to try really hard to use this biggest number all the time.
Right.
Yeah, because you use applying force. I think every single time you had to use a narrative roll, right?
From what I recall, yes. I know I had also enduring strain, which is like a narrative skill that, you know, lets you push past your limits and stuff like that. I don't think I use. If I used that, it was like once, but I definitely used applying force like 2-3 times at least.
Yeah, that's fair. And like, I think that's just like the because the bonus provided was so, like, going from 1d6 to taking 2d6, taking the highest, is a really big jump in probability, right? Yeah. So it's like really, it made it so it's like you really wanted to get at least another d6 on there, because you know, it was too much like onto the player stats of being like, okay, this is good. And like, to be fair, in the I guess the combat section of the game, you know, the stats are kind of middling anyway, but you're still guaranteed at least a 25% chance to do anything just based on the die roll, right? Mm-hmm. And you know, I kind of want it to be kind of like that, where it's like people don't have to always just rely on like their biggest number. They should be able, you should be trying to use other things, or like at least just like what your character feels like in the moment, right? Mm-hmm. A little bit less of like, this is what I'm really good at, but this is how my character actually would think and do in the situation. I mean, Maisie, I think, is a complex character. I don't think she just smashes every single time she has a chance to do it.
No, she's just like spectacularly good at it. Macy is the character I was playing, for people who don't know, and a character I'd played before. Obviously, she has a mace. Yeah, she's a little more cerebral than her stats might give her credit for. Exactly, right? And I kind of wanted to find a way to not represent that like totally, but at least give the option to be like, I need to not throw my biggest number at this. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Anyway, so now the new
rules are a little bit funky. I have to figure out the dice math a little bit. But now I kind of like the idea of, I you know me, I am bad at writing stuff down. So I decided to force myself to break down what it actually means to run an adventure, right?
Right.
Like what the players are actually doing, playing the game. So an adventure is made up of story beats, which consists of combat scenes and story scenes. One usually leads into the other, as you do normally in RPGs.
Yeah.
And the adventures have like a grand goal, right, to accomplish. So like recovering an artifact, returning it to the king, finding a missing archaeologist who has not returned from expedition, or defeat the demon lord. I put that name, I'm not going to say that. I think it's like Malinula Path, weird demon lords, and his evil minions.
Okay. Of all the names you could have picked.
I know. I just put it in like a generator, right? It's like, oh yeah, that looks like a demon-y name. But there's two A's next to each other. I don't know how to say that. Must be that crazy demon tongue. Anyway, so these goals are split up into like smaller objectives that the pieces will try and kind of overcome and complete. And these smaller objectives are stored, I guess grouped into story beats, right? Mm-hmm. So these story beats are kind of like subsections of the adventure where it's like the initial opening quests, and maybe something kind of maybe it's like the 3-act of like a 3-act structure of like a TV show or something like that. Sure. For a story beat. So it'd be like the setup, the rising action, and then the payoff of the adventure, right? But these objectives, so it's made up of objectives, which is like clear goals that will drive the story forward. Mysteries, which things that players get to find out, like information that's critical to unlock other parts of the story. And obstacles, which are things that are going to impede the PC's path and provide challenges and stuff like that. So it could be like antagonists, could be like you have to climb a really big wall, and obviously that includes like combat encounters, as well as like those high intensity story cutscenes where things happen. And the idea is that you lay out the obstacles for the players to do, or whatever the goal is, or the objective of what the players need to do. And the players all have this thing called effort. And for now, players start off with 3 effort, and they basically assign where they want to put their efforts to. So, if some players want to be the smart person to figure out the mystery, then they put it in there. If other players want to figure out how getting around the obstacle, then they put their effort there. For every point of effort they apply to an obstacle, the players roll a d6. And basically that's kind of where they get that's sort of the status of like the action roll is called, or like the narrative roll. I actually call, I think the last couple episodes I've been calling like rolling the dice, consulting the bones. I think that's become a catchphrase of mine now. So now I've put it into the game, and now when a player wants to do like a narrative roll, or it's like a cutscene or something like that, it's called consulting the bones. So the player rolls a d6 for every point of effort they apply to to address the situation, and then they also can choose like a bonus, kind of similar to what we had previously. I didn't change any of those, so you could like say if someone's trying to catch a boulder that's rolling down a hill to squish the party, you would probably endure strain. And so you would you put a bunch of effort into it, you roll those d6s, and then you would add your enduring strain action, or narrative skill.
Okay, so does adding that skill add another d6, or is that adding a number?
No, it adds a number now. It adds a number now. So now and then the GM rolls an equivalent, but like a depending on the situation, amount of d12s, and all the player has to do is get equal to or higher than it to successfully complete the task or whatever they're trying to do. If they roll underneath but are not doubled, then you succeed, but the GM gets to add like a little twist. But if the GM's roll is double your narrative roll or your results, you gain you fumble completely, and the GM gets to choose what sad fate happens to you, I guess.
Okay, so just so I can understand how it works. So all the players have this thing called effort, that you have 3 points in a gauge or a bowl or whatever you want to call it. You have 3 points of some sort of container. I don't know why that was the first word I went to. You have 3 points of effort, basically. And each of those is worth a D6 in a narrative roll.
Yeah.
And you spend those to figure out how many D6s you want to roll. You add a bonus depending on what skills your character has. And are you adding all the D6s together for a combined total?
Oh, so you basically are resolving like one obstacle at a time. I haven't figured out yet, like how it needs to be split up. If you could split your attention, that may be like maybe you have to pay a little more to split your attention. But basically, it's like every story beat you can only have so many efforts to put towards doing something. And if you don't so let's say if you put one effort into stopping that boulder or whatever, right, and you roll and you fail, that can lead into more complications. So you would put more effort into resolving those obstacles or whatever that's happening as well.
What I was wondering is like the actual math of it. Like when you roll, if you put 2 effort in, you roll 2d6s. Are you taking the higher one still, or are you adding that together?
No. You're just adding that together. Sorry. Yes. You
okay.
That
Sorry.
together.
That's what I was running through.
Yeah.
So you take your d6s equal to the amount of effort you spend. You add your value on from your skill, and you're trying to beat the result the GM has gotten with their roll of a number of d12s equal to the difficulty of the situation.
Yeah. It's more like a battle of fates. Like, sure, like the GM would say like, that's something extremely hard, or that's hard, right? So you'd roll 2d12s. Right now, again, it'll probably flesh out a little bit more by the time this episode is actually aired. But the idea is that the players get to choose where they want to put their efforts, so they probably pool together dice and then roll all together. Mm-hmm. And basically it's like if you could have a string of luck where the GM rolls snake eyes, right? Something might be extremely hard, but luckily something miraculous happened, right? Or maybe the GM spikes high on a normal everyday task, and it's just a kind of like a bad day for you, and then you rolled snake eyes. I don't know. More than likely, the players will get that middling mixed result more than anything. It's very unlikely depending on where they put their efforts, the players could roll. The GM is unlikely to double the players in most cases.
Right. One thing I was wondering, I don't know if you touched on it yet, how do people recharge their effort, or is it just you get 3 per story beat?
So you get 3 per story beat. So every time there's a new story beat, then you get an effort back. And every time there's a combat, you get all 3 of your effort back at the new story beat. But you also get, after every combat, you get an effort. So the idea is that you're trying to navigate the story beat, applying your effort where it's needed, after every combat scenario, you get an effort back. This is weird, isn't it? Yeah. That's the idea right now. Again, haven't gotten a chance to play test it yet. Actually, we're skipping today's play test this week, I think. So I guess by next week, you guys should know how it turned out.
Yeah, schedules were weird this weekend. I gotta stop running games on Sundays because then I can't stream on Sundays. Yeah,
it's a tough one. But yeah, that's kind of the new idea of narrative rules. It's kind of like a Winds of Fate kind of deal. Less like, even if you have like a couple bonuses in like a certain stat, realistically, the way that you get a better result is that you have to either work with your teammates cleverly, maybe put the brain and the brawn together in a gamma lab for 6 months, right? And or you get lucky, the winds of fate go in your favor when you consult the bones.
So if players work together on a roll, are they adding up all of their values together?
Yep, you just chuck them all together. I don't think the additional numbers, I think some of the numbers, because the amount of points you put into stuff will probably max out. I'm thinking maybe at like 4 or 6. So if like players are doing like, you get like a pretty, I guess a pretty big boost on the numbers. But I mean, you also have to think about how much effort you put into stuff, because if there are obstacles that the GM has planned for and you guys don't have any effort into it, then those kind of like automatically fail, or maybe they get stressed out about that. We'll see. We'll see about that one. I have to figure out whether or not the effort rules are going to stay, as in like the players only get so much effort to put into stuff, or it may be changed in some other rules.
Okay. Yeah, because my one thing I was thinking is the pool, which I guess is a better word than bowl. The pool that you have for effort seems like a pretty low number, just having 3, but it does kind of also encourage people to work together, because you can sort of share that cost across a bunch of people. Like it would be better for 3 people to lose 1 effort than for 1 person to lose 3, I would think, especially if that person has a specific skill that they want to apply to something.
Or the idea would be that each player will specialize to the point where they're really good at one thing, and then when that one thing comes up, then they, they're like, oh, I'll take this on. So they kind of forces players to be in the spotlight, but they can't be in the spotlight forever, like all the time, because they'll run out of effort, right? They have to literally like be a background character to someone else's time in the sunshine, right? And the player with like the biggest bonus, or like who has the idea, would be the one rolling all the dice anyway, right? So let's say like someone puts 2 effort into something, they have the biggest, they have like 3 to applying force, right? But like somebody else has like going to put 1 effort into that roll to deal with whatever the problem is, and they're going to do enduring strain, and they only have 1. So the idea would be like you're really supporting that character in doing whatever they're doing, and they get to roll a dice and they get the bonus, and they get to narrate like how's it going. So maybe somebody like pins somebody down while someone like punches them in the face or something like that. Right.
Like one person takes the lead on the check.
Exactly, right. I want to also want people to take the lead on stuff, being like, hey, this is how it's gonna happen, and basically see how it goes. I still like the idea of handing the player the mic and being like, narrate how this happened. Right? Or give me an idea, like that back and forth, instead of it just being the GM. So this is kind of like a way of still making that happen, but also I really like the idea of chaos, and this is a very chaotic way of doing stuff. Right?
Yeah, because it's a dice versus dice kind of thing.
I have to do the dice math on it to see like what the probabilities of each, like the idea of each roll, like what would be what is the nominal amount of like dice you would need in a pool for each of the situations, because right now it's like 1d12 to 2d12s to 3d12s, right? Like the 1d12s is pretty random, but the 2d12s works out to be like, I don't know, like 13 or something like that, and then that would be equivalent to like 4d6s, but I think 4d6s equals out to maybe equal to or a little bit higher on the average.
Right.
So that's kind of the idea. It's like, how many d6s does it actually take to do a hard task, and therefore how many players needs to basically, how much effort a bunch of players need to put into it. So like a hard task would probably require 1 effort from each of the players if it's a 4-player party.
Is there some guideline for the people running the game, game masters, I guess? Is there some guideline for the number of tasks to set within a story beat, or the difficulty of tasks to set within a story beat?
No, not yet, because this is like real fresh. I definitely have to actually use them first before I do it. But basically the idea is kind of like the rule of 3. So any story beat, there should probably be about like 3 objectives or mysteries or something for the players to do, and then the additional ones. So you have 3 major ones, so once those resolve, or once someone tries to attempt one of them, maybe they'll devolve into another one, maybe they'll open up more objectives. But the idea is that 3 is pretty good. 2 is like, I think, a little bit necessary, because you can use to split the party or split the objectives. And I think that like in general, it kind of comes that way too, because let's say like for instance, I have here an example of a story be called The Journey, right? You're basically going from one place to the other, and maybe sometimes the terrain is like hazardous, or you're in unfriendly territory, but there's 3 obstacles. It's navigation. You have to figure out, to make sure that you can get where you're going. Traversal, actually getting around the objects, the the terrain, scaling cliffs, crossing rivers, that kind of stuff. And survival, which means you have to actually sustain yourself. Maybe it's a hostile terrain, so maybe you're trying to avoid danger and something like that, right? In these case scenarios, like, it really depends on like what the players, like the makeup of the party and how the players view themselves as characters, right? So like an example, like the ranger, right? Classic ranger is like, I will put my effort into whatever. Like, maybe it's like, I'm going to make sure the party survives, right? So I'm going to do all the hunting and gathering and making sure all that stuff is good. Or maybe I'll help the party traverse the terrain. So, I will, help the party scale this cliff or something like that, right? So, it's not like your roles are personal. Your roles are basically just like, could be representing like your personal thing, or it could be representing how you assist the party in general, right? Because technically, if there's a big rock to scale, everybody has to try and scale it, but it doesn't require like a role from everybody. It just depends who's going to be taking lead on that one. And I guess in my idea would be like, the ranger would, if it was, he put all his effort into traversal, the ranger's really focusing on guiding the party and like lifting people up and like maybe putting like pins into the wall, making sure people can scale it properly, that kind of stuff. Like, it doesn't have to be like in the moments kind of deal, but it's kind of like a broad sense of how everything went for like the journey in this case.
Okay, so if you do come across that big cliff or whatever, not everybody has to succeed the check to climb it, but you have to get a success from someone on a check to climb it.
Yeah, exactly, right. And if you fumble a little bit, it could just mean like maybe somebody gets hurt, maybe you get hurt, maybe you slip and someone loses an item, that kind of deal. I mean, that's really up to the GM of how they want to spin it, and it really depends on who's putting in the effort. So like, if a bunch of characters are going in on traversal, then they are subjected to the bad juju that happens if a roll is failed or if a roll is mixed.
Okay.
Yeah.
I think I want to test this because I have other questions, but they are the kind of thing that I feel like you would find out in testing.
Exactly. This is super raw, super new, super untested. Again, I don't call my schemes crackpot for no reason. Literally cracked the pot like a couple of days ago. I don't think it's even been 24 hours. So yeah.
Okay, so this is hot off the presses.
Hot off the presses. Game design at its finest.
Because one thing I was curious about was if no one has any effort, if it's possible to make a check, because it sounded like it wasn't.
It feels like if everyone uses their effort, you guys should probably run into a combat.
Fair.
Yeah, the game is the narrative rules are meant to support the tactical combat. The primary mode of operandum of the narrative rules is to support the story of the combat scenarios, right? So realistically, you should never really be like, if you flub up traversal, then you fall into a pit and fight some spiders. If you flub up survival, oh no, you ran out of food and now you gotta go be hunted by spiders. Everything leads to spiders. Navigation.
You mess up navigation.
Yeah.
You walk into a web of spiders.
Exactly.
Oh my
gosh.
Okay.
That's the idea, right? It doesn't matter if the players are out of effort. That just means that you should probably throw a combat at them so they can get some effort back.
Okay, I see.
Yeah.
I guess I was just wondering, like, if there were other ways around that, or if they just happened to be in the middle of a skill thing and everybody had already used up all their effort and stuff like that. But yeah, okay, I see.
Yeah, well then you kind of go into this fail state where, if everybody can't provide any more effort into doing something, then the worst, like, I don't think narrative rules should probably, I would say, like, the intent again is very strongly like to support combat. Like, this isn't Blades in the Dark, right? You're not just playing it's not just totally story based. These rules are very much here to assist the transition from you telling a story to everyone playing combat rules, right?
Right.
Yeah, and that's why it's a little wonky, and that's why it's like, players are more likely to get a mixed result, but also you never know. It's like it could spike very high either way, and either way, it's like you should. I think that the advice would be, or like the intent would be like, like it would be like combats first, and then how do I get to the combats? that's how the idea is. But naturally, everything is like, again, little bit of narrative, a little bit of combat. I think that's how I would imagine every session of Grand Saga would be, like a little bit of narrative, a little bit of combat, a little bit of narrative, a little bit of combat, narrative. Like, who knows, right? Mm-hmm. But okay. Again, just to bring context to those loose fights. Yeah.
I was gonna suggest, and I mean, this might be a thing that I'm gonna test also. Just like if you don't have any effort, I guess all you have is your skill number, which I assume is gonna be less than 6 anyways.
That's so good. That sounds so bad. People running up there with like a 2. On like
yeah, like it's not impossible, depending on the difficulty of the thing. I kind of assumed all your Calvin. Skills were like less than 6, so.
Yeah, more than likely would be less than 6. My idea would be that they would go up in like 2 increments. Like, you put one point into like, applying knowledge, so you're smarter, right? And then if you put once you maybe you level up or something like that, you could put another point into it, so you get that bonus would become a 4+. Right, so I guess a 4 on 1d6 is actually 25%. So even if you don't have any effort, you could always attempt to consult the bones. You could always consult the bones and see how it turns out.
Yeah, because depending on the thing, like it's 1, 2, or 3 d12, right? If you have like a 2 in something, if you get that 1 or 2 d12 task, it's not impossible because you don't have that effort to give yourself a wider range.
Well, the idea would be, and if you all work together, that's even better, right? Like a bunch of 2+ together, you could equal like 4 players doing a bunch of 2+. That's 8. That's actually quite a bit on a regular roll. I mean,
yeah,
feels
maybe
like
I don't know. I was throwing that out there. There might be like a cost for it, like a strain or something. But yeah.
Yeah, that's a good idea. I like that a lot. That if you don't have any more effort, you just apply your bonus and see what the GM rolls. Because I think this is the only time where the GM ever rolls anything anyway. So
true. Your game is very player role focused.
Yeah, but now it's fun. Now the GM gets to be like, fools. Can you beat a 30? And they're gonna be like, no.
Okay. All right. Yeah. I think I like this idea, but again, everything that I'm wondering about it, I feel like requires testing.
Yeah, this is like a testing scenario. This is like a testing problem, not a think about it problem. Because also it has to be like how it feels, right? Because I can do all the dice math, and if the dice math are like it's perfect, it actually won't. I would say it won't feel as good as like just getting the actual vibe of what it means to consult the bones, right?
Yeah, like to actually make those checks and how it feels for people in the game to do it.
Exactly, and you only consult the bones when there's stakes, right? There's stakes. If there's no stakes, then the GM just gets to decide, I think, or the GM and the players get to decide. All the time, I'm like, if a player has a good idea, I want more good ideas, and less, I have a bonus, I have this big ass bonus, and now I'm the king because I, persuaded the queen to sleep with me, so now I'm the king, right? Like, I don't like any of that. I want people to come up with good plans, and if the plan's good enough, don't roll. Just say like you did it. Don't worry about it, man.
Would you
That's a good idea.
Would you have some sort of circumstance in there for the GM to see and say, like, if I don't know that you can apply a rule to like, here is how good an idea is for you to not have to roll, but would you have like some sort of circumstantial bonus that the GM could offer if someone comes up with a good way to use a narrative skill?
Yeah, so right now I'm gonna keep like the same action modifiers where it's like you're pressing at an advantage, so like you gain an extra d6. You're in a bad position, so you lose a d6 in the roll. So I like the idea of putting it back down to just your raw stats. Good luck, but that's per person, right? So, the situation is risky. So like any sort of complications that do arise, like will become like a major one. So that's kind of like where I'm working. So like if something goes bad, it's going to go really bad because it's risky. You're in a bad position. You can't contribute too much. So, you either need to put more effort in to get a good result or to even to, not participate, but to, do anything meaningful. And, you're pressing an advantage. You're already on top. You're just going to win even harder, right? Getting an extra D6 and pressing an advantage would be, how you get those higher higher dice pools. So you can get those beat those higher DCs that the GM rolls. Right. I might call the GM's roll the fate roll or something like that. I don't know. I also had this idea too about trying to get players to be more like heroes. So I would want to reward good karma points. So if you save someone's life, you get some good karma because you're embodying the idea of what it means to play this character. But I also, in the future, I think once we figured out this dice roll scenario, I'm probably going to build out archetypes. I already have a little bit in the example characters inside of the game, but it's I want to give basically narrative powers, right?
Yeah.
To so it's the ranger or whatever could just I can always make an advantage, or I can the ranger maybe gets good karma for doing cool ranger things or maybe the Tomb Raider, if they get to recover some cool piece of treasure, they get some cool karma points, and then the karma points you can pump it into making your rolls better.
Okay, that's an interesting thing. I would wonder how you would end up setting that up though, because that part of me is that's a cool individual character thing for your character to deal with, and then part of me is but that's another thing that a player has to keep track of. So I guess this is a thing that also needs testing.
Exactly, right. I mean, these are all just kind of bonuses and numbers and stuff like that anyway, right? So I think that honestly, narrative rules in games are hard, and I'm totally, and it's only, I think out of anything, the narrative rules are the first things that I throw out the window whenever I play a TTRPG, because most times I'm is it a big number? Sick, you did it. That's where I'm at. And once things get into the minutia of things, I feel sometimes it gets in the way of the storytelling. So I want to make this the easiest transaction possible for GMs, but also so it's still exciting. Nobody actually knows how it's gonna go. I might actually just put in the idea, instead of being pressing an advantage, could be you just had a good idea here, get a cool D6 because the GM rewards you that cool D6. Or no, I think that's a bad plan, but maybe you might get more complications or something like that, because that's a bad plan, but you got the good dice anyway. So maybe smashing the rock or using your rock smashing skill on the king may not work. That sounds like a bad idea. So if you fail, you're gonna get a major complication because the king's gonna be really mad. But if it succeeds, then heck, you did it. Right? That's wild. That's a story that no one could ever see coming.
Yeah, I can appreciate the difficulty of adding mechanics to narrative.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can see how you're trying to work with that, especially again, as you mentioned, your style of GMing. So
exactly, I'm basically making my type of game. I guess that makes sense. I'm not building a game for an audience. I am the audience.
True. Yeah, I do want to get into testing this stuff, but I think that's going to take some time, or whenever we manage to actually schedule that.
One day at a time. That's how it is, right? But yeah, that's the narrative rules. I'm curious if anybody has any ideas, or what are your thoughts about these narrative rules? How the DC essentially, or the target value people are trying to hit, is being randomized as well. Kind of playing with the whole Winds of Fate thing. I kind of like that, and I don't know. I mean, we're always let the dice kind of tell the narrative, and the dice are very much telling the narrative in this game.
Yeah, and I also feel risk and reward felt like a core part of the system as it was being developed. So definitely having that varying number that you're trying to reach with your own wildly varying number, and the best you can do is add a range of 1 to 6 to it. And you can't necessarily guarantee even if you add a skill that's only going to be 2 or 4 or whatever, but the best you can do is add that range of 1 to 6, and again leave that up to fate as you're trying to beat a range of 1 to 12 or 2 to 24 or whatever.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know if this is like super awesome, super cool. Maybe this will translate into the actual dice roll because it feels like this kind of thing is very translatable to the rest of the game. So maybe the combat skills might change if that's the case. But I feeling pretty confident about the combat rules. People are having fun still, so I won't mess that up. But yeah, if it's better, why not, right?
Yeah. So yeah, if people below are interested or have their own ideas, or actually if people have worked on their own systems, that's also something I've been curious about. If other people have done that sort of thing.
Yeah, or homebrew like their own rules into other games, right? Because that's the thing I do. Every GM kind of does by playing the game, right? You never play anything straight by the rules anyway, right? Always applying like the rule of cool and stuff like that, right? So I want to know if there's any cool things that you've added into games or you've tossed out because you don't really believe in it. I very much don't believe in the Pathfinder jumping rules, so I never use them.
They're pretty straightforward. I don't know, man.
There's too much math involved. So it's like, how much did you succeed by? Did you succeed enough? You only can jump this much unless you have the skills to jump. And I'm like, yo, listen, man, you're like killing dragons and stuff. You can jump. Like,
I think you're thinking of first edition jumping rules.
I don't know, maybe. Too many dishes floating around the old noggin. I can't remember what anything is anymore.
You know what? That's fair. I don't remember what game I'm remembering the bluff skill from, but it's never the right one when I remember it.
Yeah, exactly, right. Damn it.
We use magic device. When did we use that?
Yeah. That was the weirdest skill, I think. You remember too? They used to give you like bonuses too. Like you had like so much in Arcana, you could actually get an extra bonus somewhere else. It's kind of fucking wild. Like, but yeah. Other than that, other changes, I guess. I've gone mostly on the narrative stuff. But yeah, the plan is to, if that rule set works, I'm gonna create a whole bunch of narrative skills that you get. So either you get maybe extra bonuses in very specific scenarios, or you get to just be like, I'm too rich for this, and you just pay to win. Like that's always, I think that's something that should also work. You should just be able to pay to win.
True. Okay. Did you want to get into any more of the changes here, or there was a video put out by MCDM earlier that we could get into just for a few minutes?
Yeah, sure. Actually, that was probably why I made all these changes. Damn it, Matt Koval, I've been watching your videos for a very long time, and every time you post a new one, I'm like, fuck, I wish I thought about that.
Sudden burst of inspiration. You're just really set up for those bad ideas.
Yeah. Seriously, man. But yeah, it actually, I mean, I wish he did more game design stuff. I'm glad he's trying to do it now, because I'm doing it too, so it's kind of cool.
Yeah, because he's obviously a game designer, but like having actual videos on it, I think it's interesting. I'm sure there's definitely more stuff on the actual Patreon, but recently on the MCDM channel, because they're working on a new game system, so Matt Colville had put out a video with him, just sort of getting into the basics of the design of this game. And by that I mean like the large strokes of it, the terms that the game is circling around, that their design is based on. And he kind of touched on game development as well, and just a description of like different methods of development, specifically like starting off with like an outline and then working from there, and how often that outline just changes over time, as it naturally would as things change, because the design of the game is going to be in the head of the people like developing it. So like it's not going to stick to what is in the outline, because anything can change and happen in that time. But a better way is to sort of like iterate, like get to a playable state and then iterate as many times as possible, as quickly as possible.
Yeah. Which,
I get that.
Yeah, that's how you get like stuff out, because if you that's how you find out if stuff works or not, right? Like, is the game actually fun to play? That's like the biggest deal for me. It's the biggest deal for games in general, but the biggest deal is like, is this I can write mounds and mounds of words and texts and mechanics, but is the game actually fun, like, to play as like a player or run as a GM? Because like if it's not, then I'm not doing it right. Right?
Yeah, Yeah, and you can't really get to that until you get to a point where you can like play the actual game, like whether it's tabletop RPGs or like actual or like video game development or anything like that.
Yeah,
you can't really tell how fun the game is until you're actually playing it.
exactly, right. And that's like, I think, for all kind of design stuff, it's like if you're not doing it a lot, I mean, you can never tell if it's gonna be good, right? If it only exists in your brain and you don't actually make it or do it or try something or prototype it, then it's just gonna exist there. I think that's actually a case for, you know, all of tabletop RPGing, like GMing and playing and you know, being a player and stuff like that. It's like you just gotta kind of take your ideas and put them on the table and actually move them around and see how they work, right? I think a lot of new GMs get really stuck with like, oh no, I need to prepare like 5 billion things, but actually immediately, I would say by like the first word that comes out of a player's mouth, your whole idea of what the campaign is going to be or your story will immediately change.
Like, yeah.
Like immediately change. It is crazy because honestly, you're only one brain and you have a table full of them. The actual amount of good ideas that the players can come up with is statistically higher than yours. Too many times players have actually written their own adventure and I'm just here being like the parrot, being just whatever they said, I just said it right back to them in like a different way, and then they're like, oh, that's so good. I'll show you what's behind the smoke and mirrors. It's literally 2 brain cells.
And that's why GMing is fun.
Yeah, exactly why GMing is fun. It's not actually as hard as you think it is. Yeah, it's mostly
when you have
just
a good group of people.
Exactly, right. And you know, they're all trying and they're role playing and they're bouncing stuff off and everyone's having a good time. Everything's open, right? That's really good. But yeah, you know, iterate and again, one other thing about being a GM, and I guess going back to design, I feel like again the philosophy of like, you can't, if you're a game master, you're also a game designer, because again, you never use the rules exactly the way it is. The same way, like, you know, I don't know, like to me it's like, you know, you have like a hammer, but like there's only so many, you can use the hammer whichever way you want it to use it, right? So you're there's no rule set on like how to use a hammer. It's best practices, but you don't have to listen to those guys. But
okay.
But yeah, like if you like, you know, bang out a combat or you think of like a narrative scenario or something like that, and you're like, like I thought this was gonna go a different way, but it didn't what it did, or like, oh man, this combat's so hard. That's fine, because everything that you do is the first time you're doing it. Even if it's like you've run a billion combats, you've never run this combat before, you've never playtested this combat before, everything is super new. Like, you know, you could, you know, even think about every single statistic point and bring it down to a T, but because of dice and, you know, consulting the bones, you'll never actually know what the outcome's going to be. A seemingly normal fight can lead you to be a mass murderer like Calvin. Like, you could just
Ramon, were you watching our session yesterday?
It says the search CR right here. I don't know what happened.
I might have said those exact words.
Oh man, classic, you know, Pathfinder 2 double crit failed death saving throws. You're just dead in two d20s. Like,
look, in my defense, I might have forgotten that, you know, persistent damage would persist when someone is dying. I can't help it.
That's so funny. That doesn't happen in my game.
You don't use enough fire elementals, clearly.
Clearly. Wait a minute, this thing is just on fire. Oh no! Just sits on top of you and you're just dead.
When I start my Kineticist campaign, you know, I'm gonna use a bunch of elementals.
That'd be sick. I would love to just have you watched Avatar? Have you seen that show?
Yeah, man.
I don't know. Sometimes I'm confused what you know and what you don't know in pop culture.
That's fair. That's entirely fair. But yeah, I know Avatar.
Yeah, just do that.
Oh my gosh, it should, because it's a journey and I love doing journeys.
Exactly, right? They just have to, you know, take dumb Aang to all of the masters and learn all 5 5 elements, 7 elements or whatever, and then beat up the bad guy.
Ooh.
Oh,
Yeah,
like, yeah, you could do a bunch of elemental temples and shit. You just go there, and that would be kind of fun too.
I am like 100% putting that in my homebrew world, by the way. Like, just a bunch of elemental locations. Oh man, I can't tell if I want to run a Kinesis campaign or be in a Kinesis campaign, but either one I will do.
Yeah, I feel like you just want to do both. You want to like make it
I do.
and play in it at the same time. Like if you could just like have 2 Calvins, that would be the best scenario. I'm pretty sure.
You are not wrong.
Yeah. Yeah, but anyway, he also mentioned like,
oh yeah, the video.
Yeah, the video. He also mentioned like keywords to the game. Yeah, so you know, for Grand Saga, it was like I want it to be anime, like or like JRPG, that kind of deal. I want it to be choice. I want choice to be a big deal, right? And I want ease of play to be a big deal. I want things to just be easy for players to pick up and play for the most part.
Yeah. Like the keywords he was talking about with regards to like either like tactical and cinematic and stuff like that. Like what he was discussing is just like, here are the central pillars that the design is based on. So every new thing that gets added, you know, what is it doing to further one of these purposes, or how does it fit under one of these categories?
Yeah. Yeah, or and I guess the other one would be combination too. That would be a big one. Like if you can combine things, or you know, make it work together in two different things to work together. That's like the idea.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So yeah, hopefully it makes sense. I
was gonna say I feel like 4 is probably a good number for those, because once you start doing more than that, then you're just like doing things.
Exactly, right? Then you just, why stop at 5? Why don't you just keep going 6, 7 pillars? And then, you know, they can't. 4 is good. I think 3 is pretty solid. 3 and 4 are like good, solid numbers. This is why if you multiply 3 times 4, you get 12, and that's why I use a D12 dice. That's exactly why. It's impossible.
Whoa!
It's impossible. There you go, folks. This is your math your math magic right there.
Math magic of the week. Yeah, it's a pretty good video. If you're into game design, whether it's tabletop or video game or anything like that, I think it's definitely an interesting video. We'll link it below so you can actually get into it, because I think it's very interesting. It was just something that I was like, as I was looking at it, I was sort of wondering, you know, what your pillars were.
Yeah, no, yeah. I think describing as like ease of play, like, you know, combining things, you know, anime.
Yeah.
It feels good. I feel like my names aren't anime enough. I think I need to pump up the anime names. Like, you know, I need them to be at least like, you know, a big long word. Like you have to say a sentence as like an attack action or something like that. Like, you know, like hefty strike, destroyer of heavens, breaker of worlds, god killer. Like,
yeah, man, get into it.
Yeah, I should do that more often.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, we'll definitely have that video below. I think it's a great idea. It's great advice for designers. You know, it's something that I'm trying to do when I do my game development stuff, even though I never get anything done. I did finally get something done 2 weeks ago, so that was pretty nice. And I did kind of like focus on like a central mechanic, so that was something else I was also thinking about with this video, because I think mechanics would count as pillars as well.
You know what he also said too? That, you know, he said that game designing by himself sucked, and game designing with other people kicks more ass.
Yeah.
I fully believe that. We should probably work more together. Yeah.
You're right.
You know, like I said earlier, like two brain cells.
Yeah, I think you might have a better head for like the mechanical stuff. I just want to get into like the setting itself.
Yeah, I have no use for setting other than to put combats in.
To facilitate the combat. We need a background for this combat.
You know, I thought I was a different person in my younger years, but now I know what I'm about. Like,
man,
I know what gets me up in the morning.
Yeah, you should lean into it though.
Yeah.
Yeah, anything else you want to say about this video or about your overall design for Ground Saga?
No, I think it's actually making a lot of more progress than I thought it would. I mean, I've been working on it for a while, but I'm pretty happy with it.
All right. So yeah, we will have the current Grand Saga document linked below. Again, between time of recording and time the episode goes up, things might have changed, so the rules we're discussing, they could have very different details, so definitely go ahead and check the document out if you're interested in this. And of course, leave a comment below or comment on our website just to say how you feel about it and what you think. And if you want to give these rules a try yourself, you have the document there to do so with. Since we're getting into the outro, I also wanted to say, if you are into gaming streams, did skip the last week just because of busyness, but if you're into Sims, if you're into Divinity Original Sin, if you're into Dead Space 2, then definitely check those out because I'm playing through those and they are varying different kinds of stressful. Sims is pretty stressful, so I just aged up my toddlers because it's like, I can't deal with this. I just want to have fun playing Sims. So now they can functionally take care of themselves. Or at least they can feed and shower themselves. That's all I needed. And Dead Space is just scary, so. But Divinity, that's just fun because I get to play co-op with my pal, and it's fun. So yeah, if you're into all that stuff, definitely check those out. Additionally, link below, we've got a whole bunch of Lancer stuff. If you're into Lancer third-party content, or if you're into Lancer RPG, check out all the stuff we have below. And all the people we have linked to, including stuff like In Golden Flame, which was out pretty recently. I know Shaka's got like a whole bunch of streams and stuff going on, and a new book coming out, so definitely go check out all of that stuff. Also, I want to give a shout out to Untold Stories Project, where I'm at on Tuesdays and Wednesdays, just playing in some of their stream games of Mutants and Masterminds. If you're into Mutants and Masterminds, that is the best place to go for it. Because they also have a podcast that's on all the podcast platforms. They just got onto iTunes recently. And they also have discount codes for dice, as well as discount codes if you're buying something off the Green Ronin store. So definitely go check them out. Check out all their stuff. It is a whole ton of fun over there. Oh, Ramon, I meant to tell you, I did something at the Untold Stories Project. Something that I think you would appreciate. My magical girl character, I gave her a mace.
Oh, yes, finally.
And it is a mace that is capable of returning to her hand.
Ah, yes, exactly. I'm pretty sure Macy actually is a magical girl. Not yet. Hasn't transformed yet. But yeah, I mean, that's true. She's just missing like a catchphrase before she like chucks that thing and yeets somebody like into space.
Yeah, pretty much. So yeah, the spirit of Macy lives on in this new character. So yeah, it was pretty exciting. The last stream of our Gemstars game was like one of my favorite ones so far. So definitely go check that out. There was a lot of drama in that. The dice were really on the side of drama in that episode.
Nice.
But that's all I got. Ramon, anything that you want to shout out?
No. I don't think so. Play Grand Saga if you haven't, or just read it, and let me know what you think. Totally into everyone's feedback so far. Everyone seems to like it, so yeah, I want to know what you guys think.
Yeah, so definitely check out the document below, check out the MCDM video we were just talking about, and yeah, I think that's gonna do it for now. So for all of our narrative GMs and players out there, just remember to keep on winning with dice, and we'll see you next time.
Bye, guys.